favourite songs of choice there. I Hope You Dance, Leanne Womack. All about choices, 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 which reminds me of a recording we once made. Choices, choices, choices. Remember that bit? From Joy Journey?
Oh, yes.
You know, in a bit where I fell asleep while I was recording you.
Well,
that was
actually,
very interesting, wasn't
I have
it?
to say, when I walked in here, I had moments of horror. I do have to tell this story. Lex had a studio, and bless his little cotton socks, he was recording Joy Journey, which we made for Nightingale Conant back in 2000, 16 years ago. And part of Joy Journey is that there are some nice little quiet areas where I'm giving people things to think about to help them build their joy. And I walked into his studio, which has these wonderfully acoustic tiles. They look like an egg carton if you haven't been in a recording studio. And they're all over the wall and the ceiling. And so I was merrily going along. There were two stories. One was when Lex fell asleep in the middle of while I was doing this. And the other one was when Lex was deeply into recording and pushing his buttons. And I was with my eyes closed deeply into thinking and doing. And one of the tiles fell off onto me. Now, they're no weight at all, and they're very soft and cuddly, actually. But it caused me to squeak out loud, which caused poor Lex with the headphones on to do triple somersaults. It was quite exciting on the beanbag on the floor and land in a perfect 3-point landing. So it was very funny. I'm sorry, but we digress.
It was a good digression, though. We utilised the moment.
Sorry.
So that will be the U, actually, when we get to that in the really useful alphabet. Utilisation, I think that's one of the greatest lessons you can ever learn. So, should we talk apps? Is that the appropriate time to talk about apps?
It definitely can be, because I have two lovely stories.
You do, don't you?
I
Of course.
have.
Yep.
The first was when we wrote the book and it got out there, because everybody was saying, well, don't you have an app? Because timing the 8 minutes is difficult, and everybody does things by apps, and you can have your phone and do it so easily. Because when you do those 8 minutes, now you can see you don't need any special equipment, you don't need anything. You can do it more or less anywhere, not driving, please. So I thought, yes, I would love an app, but by golly, by gosh, they cost rather a lot of money. Out of the blue comes this email from a lovely gentleman in California who was a single parent, and he said, Vanda, I've read your book, and it's made all the difference in how I'm coping with all that I have on my plate. He said, I noticed that you don't have an app, and I'm an app designer. Could I design an app for you? Well, I'm sitting there going,
thank you, universe.
could you? Yes, please. So bless dear Chris. Thank you a million times. He did a beautiful app, and it was up on the iStore for quite a long time, but then he got very busy, and apparently you have to do quite a lot of things to keep them up to date.
Right.
And so it came to the point where he couldn't do that, and he wrote me a letter saying, very, very sorry. At about the same time, a couple of people who had that app wrote and said, Vanda, the app doesn't seem to be working anymore. And I explained what had happened and how grateful I was for having had one, and now there was a gap. And one of them is a dear friend and fellow trainer from our past lives that Lex and I share. And she said, I have a son who might be able to make one for you. Now, I'd known of Jeremy, thank you, Jeremy, as someone who was an actor and a dancer and a musician, but I didn't know he made apps. Well, he hadn't that much, but he wanted to learn.
Right.
So he and I worked together, and for a very small amount of money, I think it's under £3, like £2.40 something, he has made a lovely app that times the 8 minutes and just tells you, when it says breathe, and then it does the minute, and then goes bing, and then the second one all the way through. So it gives you a key word to help you remember if you're still learning.
Yes.
But once it doesn't take that long
Breathe,
before you
one.
know it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And you can close your eyes if that's appropriate and just go through the 8 minutes. The only thing was, I said to him, Jeremy, can we change the tone of the last minute? Because otherwise people may be expecting you may be
Stuck in Manchi forever.
So that was my little story. And so the app is available. It's on the iPhone store. You can just download that little babe and the little chi character will pop in. It's got a questionnaire, 2 questionnaires, so you can actually take the questionnaires to find out how am I functioning now. It's got a very brief description of these 8 steps, and you can also email me and I'll send you
I was
that
going to say,
as well.
we've got the download, haven't we, that we can
We've got a free
we can send.
download
Yeah.
for you, which I'll happily send you. And then it just does the timing. It's nothing more than you need. It's just there. It's just
elegant.
perfect.
Yeah.
It's elegant simplicity, which I just appreciate so much, and is available now for you for a very few pennies to grab a hold of.
What I'm really seeking now is an opportunity to create mind cheese. There must be something we can stick in cheese to get your great brain chemicals going. Yes, that was an unrehearsed moment, and Vanda is giving me the look that we've shared over many years. Where did that one come from? Mind cheese.
Mind cheese, well, of course. And I'm desperately trying to think of something brilliant to say, but
Your face was as brilliant as I wanted. I wanted that look of, all right, what do we do with this one? I'll tell you exactly what we do with this one. We move on to the next subject.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
you've got other story, I think.
Well, the other story was a story about how the book came
Yes.
to be, which is also fascinating. After Swami and I had created the 8 steps, we mostly had it just that we were gathering anybody who would sit still for any length of time, and we were sharing it with them and doing it with groups. Then we thought we would make it maybe into an e-course, but then out of the blue comes an email. And it's from a lovely, lovely lady, and she says, "You may not remember me, but I was working with you years ago as a ghost writer for someone else, and I was very, very sort of confused actually by everything that there was, and wanted to try and make sense of it. And you spent quite a lot of time helping and doing." I remembered her. I didn't remember that I'd helped. Anyway, she said, "It happens that I am now a commissioning editor
Wow.
for Capstone Wiley.
Fantastic, yes.
Do you happen to have," she said, "I know you're quite creative, any books that you'd like published?" Well, I mean, knock me over with a feather twice. So I said 10 at any given moment. Here are the titles. She narrowed it down to 3, took them to all of the committees and everything, and they came back that they chose Mind Chi. Initially, it was going to be a general book because my heart is really with children and giving them processes that they can
Make them
manage
robust,
this
yes.
life. And the stress in schools these
Yes.
days is heartbreaking. So that was my initial thought, but Capstone is a business book, and so it takes no effort to take the 50 examples of strategies where we've taken the basic 8 minutes, which is the basic program, and applied them to all kinds of different things that people want all the way through life.
All the applications,
So
yeah.
time management, prioritization, as well as things like self-confidence, managing anger, forgiving. So it really is the whole spectrum. There's 1 or 2 sections that are more specific, such as sales techniques and managing rejection, for example, from sales. So we had to pare them down from 100, which we initially had, to 50, which is good because this book still weighs, well, several of them, and you're doing muscle development. And the lady that we had who did this is Sarah Sutton, and a big shout to Sarah.
Sarah Sutton.
Because she took Swami and I and the book on as a very special project and really poured her heart and soul into making it something that I am extremely proud, because often you can do something and then think, oh, I wish I would have done this or that. And she really worked so hard, and so what a wonderful gift just out of the blue. So aren't I blessed?
You
Isn't
are.
that wonderful?
So does that mean we can look forward to sales chi and time chi and...
Well, you could very easily. I would actually rather probably do something more for groups of people, like student chi, students. All it would take is just directing the 50 strategies to student world or baby boomer chi, because
Lunchy.
stress for the baby boomers. I couldn't believe.
Yeah.
Went to do a weekend course and expected business people to turn up already. Friday night comes in my first group, which is going to stay with me right through Sunday. Most of them are over 70.
Wow.
And I went, wow. So I said, well, what I'm going to share is probably going to be good for your children and grandchildren. No, it's for us. They said, we're stressed.
Yes.
And it was amazing because so many of the little habit patterns were so ingrained.
They'd rehearsed. Yes.
And there was one couple who came together, and we discussed some optional behaviours. And she came down the next morning, and she was
Glowing.
ecstatic.
Yeah.
She said, "This has made all that. For 50 years I've been married to him, and I've been suffering with my response to his button pushing,
Yes.
which was not necessary." She said the freedom and the joy. Well, at every meal, she was at every table around, because there were lots of other courses going on. "You must take this lady's course. It's the best thing."
Wow.
Since.
You had an evangelist.
I did indeed. So I'm looking now at groups of people
Yes.
who particularly feel that they may be stressed, and that's what I would like to focus on as the next step.
I've got a lovely friend who has his home in the Spanish islands, and he doesn't call them retreats, obviously they're advances for him.
Right.
It's all about finding your smile in midlife.
Lovely.
Yeah, really nice idea.
Nice.
Are we going to talk about the story that led to developing resilience?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
And I don't always share this.
No.
Because I don't particularly like talking about myself. To me, it's everybody out there. But on the rare occasions where I've had such a response to it. And I think part of it is people appreciate knowing that you've walked a mile in the moccasins. And I don't think there's any life, I'm sure nobody listening has managed to go through without having some blows. And what often happens in life is that you get several blows, and they all come boom,
Come at
boom,
once,
boom,
yeah.
boom at the same time. And so for me, it was back around 05-06 when a series of things
Yes.
came together, and they culminated in my feeling absolutely, totally down below the bottom, squish-squashed, absolutely. One of them was, for example, that I had an aggressive takeover of my business. In reflection, could I have fought it? Probably yes, but at that time I was so devastated I didn't think about doing that. It forced me into having to go through liquidation with my company. Now, my company was like my family.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah, these were, well, this is how I first knew Lex,
Yes,
who,
yeah.
and I want to come back to the story of how I first knew you, if that's appropriate. And we'd been together in many cases for 20 years, and I knew and loved these people. It was, we worked together, we played together, we had a passion for making the world a better place
It
together.
wasn't a business, was it? It was a tribe.
It wasn't,
really, of-
exactly.
Yeah.
And the thought that I was letting them down, that I was going to have to close the business, and many of them relied on me for their family's well-being, was totally devastating. Having the liquidators come in and look at everything. We'd gone from having one very small office with a second-hand chair and a kind of old table to having a rather nice office
Very
with
much so.
nice new desks and new computers, and having the person go in and well, that's worth £5. You'll be lucky if you get anything for this and nothing for that, and the whole thing was worth nothing. And so that was, okay, so there was the financial devastation, the emotional devastation of letting my family down.
Yes. And of course you didn't, but it felt like it.
Yes, absolutely. And then the physical of my whole life, which had been 24/7, total focus being removed. And it was at the same time as my dear mama, who was really my only close relative, I've got some faraway cousins, but that was about it, was very, very sick and eventually did quite soon die. So there was that whole thing going on. And it was also at the time when I was going to have one of those wonderful birthdays with a 0,
Yes.
which added another focus.
I was going to say, it really does focus you, doesn't it? Yes.
Yes.
Gosh.
So I suddenly had this enormous vacuum of people and things that were in my life totally removed. And it felt like every time I was just starting to pull myself up, there was, bap, another whack across. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? And there's one quote that nature actually loves a vacuum because it...
Now that's the opposite to what I usually hear, so that's nice, isn't it?
I know. It sucks things in. So if I hadn't had everything taken out, if all those doors hadn't closed, it wouldn't have allowed other doors to open and other things to come in. So it was coming up for this birthday. And I had seen a snippet in one of those throwaway advertiser papers which had caught my attention, and I'd ripped it out. Then I'd gone on tour for 3 months, come back, flopped everything on my desk, and in the flopping, it went blah, 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 and fell on the floor. So I picked it back up, looked at it, and it was our local hospital, Bournemouth Hospital's jigsaw appeal, and they were wanting people to climb Mount Kilimanjaro to raise money for their hospital appeal. And it was right over my birthday. And I thought...
This was the big birthday.
A big O birthday.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to do that.
Yes.
I had no idea. I didn't own a pair of boots. I had never trekked. I mean, I love walking on the beach, but it's not. I had no trekking outfit, not a sleeping bag, nothing, and nothing. So I go along to one of the preparatory meetings. There's about 23 people there. And there's one man who stands up who has done a trek or two before, Dr. Robert MacDonald Chapman, and he's telling us the things that we need to know about the equipment and medical things, and one of his specialities is immunization.
Yes.
And I think I said that right.
You did.
And he's talking about this. So in my naive state, I peep up and I say, is there a homeopathic remedy for malaria?
I can imagine Bob's response.
And bless him, he didn't laugh. And so anyway, he had a word and said, no, that wasn't quite possible. The end of the story was that only 6 of us actually got on that plane to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Of the 6, one I have enormous respect for. He had asthma. He'd also never done anything physical like this before. He got to the peak of Mount Kilimanjaro and said, I'm going back down. After you reach the peak, there's another 2.5 hours to reach the highest point. So you have a big decision to make when you get to the peak. There was another one who was so sick that he got carried back down on a stretcher. And now there's 4 of us that get to the peak. And we look at each other.